The first thing Emma noticed that Tuesday afternoon was the quiet. The street outside her window was usually alive with kids playing and neighbors chatting, but today it felt empty. She sipped her tea and stared at the mailbox, expecting another bill, another piece of routine life. Instead, she spotted a figure walking up the sidewalk, a young man she recognized, though she couldn't place him immediately. He had the same easy stride as her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, and that's when it clicked. It was his son, Luke. She hadn't seen him in years, not since he moved out for college. Now, here he was, looking older, carrying a backpack that seemed heavier than he was. Emma debated whether to open the door. Luke stopped at the gate and gave a small wave. Something in his expression tugged at her. He didn't look like the confident teenager she remembered. There was a hesitance, almost a quiet worry. "Hi, Luke," she called, stepping onto the porch. "It's been a long time." "Hi, Mrs. Emma," he replied, his voice soft. He shifted the backpack on his shoulder, glanced down at the pavement, then back up. I was hoping to ask you something." Her curiosity piqued. Emma stepped aside to let him in. "Of course. What is it?" He hesitated, then muttered, "I'm having a bit of a rough week. Thought maybe you could help." Emma's heart softened. She had always had a soft spot for Luke, even as a kid. He was polite, observant, the kind of person who noticed little details others overlooked. She gestured toward the living room. "Why don't you sit down? We can talk." As Luke sat, Emma noticed his hands fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. There was something in his posture that made her worry. Was he hungry? Tired? Overwhelmed by college life or something more? "Rough week?" she asked gently, pouring a glass of water. "Do you want to tell me about it?" Luke took the glass, hands shaking slightly. "It's a mix, classes, work, trying to figure out what's next. I needed a place to think for a minute. You always seemed like someone who could. I don't know, give advice, or at least listen." Emma smiled softly. She remembered the same calm feeling she had when his father would bring the neighborhood kids by for a chat. Luke's eyes held a depth she hadn't noticed before. College had shaped him, but it hadn't hardened him. He was still Luke, the kind, thoughtful young man she had always admired. "Sometimes, just having someone listen makes a big difference," Emma said. "You're welcome to sit here as long as you need." He nodded, a small relief washing over his features. They sat quietly for a few minutes. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room. It was peaceful, the kind of peace Emma hadn't realized she craved until now. Finally, Luke spoke again. "I didn't mean to drop by like this. I just didn't know where else to go." Emma shook her head. "You're never an inconvenience, Luke." "Not to me. And it's good to see you. Really good." He gave a small, appreciative smile, and for a moment, they just sat there, listening to the quiet hum of the neighborhood settling into evening. It was ordinary, yet it felt significant. "I was worried I'd be imposing," Luke admitted, voice lower now. "But just being here, it helps more than I can explain." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. There was something fragile in the way he said it, a trust she hadn't expected. She reached over and lightly touched his arm, not in a startling way, just a comforting gesture. "You're always welcome here," she said. "Sometimes, life just piles up, and it's okay to lean on someone else for a bit. That's not weakness." Luke's eyes softened, and he nodded. "Thanks, Mrs. Emma. Really." The clock ticked quietly. Evening had fallen, and the golden light of the sunset streamed through the windows. Emma realized she hadn't expected company, not today, not like this, but she was glad for it. The ordinary rhythm of her life had been interrupted in a way that felt meaningful. Luke shifted in his seat. "I brought something for your garden," he said, reaching into his backpack. "Thought it might brighten it up." Emma's eyes widened. "You didn't have to do that." He shrugged, a modest grin forming. "I wanted to. You've always been kind to me, even when I was just a kid running around, probably making a mess." Emma laughed softly. It was a light, easy sound, like the air after rain. "Well, I'll gladly take it. The garden could use a little company." They walked out to the small backyard, the scent of earth and flowers filling the air. Luke knelt to place the small plant in a sunny corner, careful with the soil. Emma watched him, feeling a strange, comforting sense of nostalgia and pride all at once. "You know," she said, "it's funny how life works. Sometimes, you think you're helping someone, but really, they end up helping you just by being here." Luke looked up at her, eyes wide, as if he understood completely. The soft warmth of connection lingered between them, quiet but undeniable. As they finished planting, Emma felt a subtle shift in the room, something lighter, gentler. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there. The kind of moment that could change a day, maybe even more. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. As Luke packed up to leave, Emma noticed he lingered near the doorway. There was something he wanted to say, she could tell, but the words seemed stuck. She felt the same hesitation on her own lips, as if the air held a secret they were both afraid to speak. Then, without warning, Luke smiled softly and said, "I'll see you soon?" Emma nodded, though her heart fluttered unexpectedly. "I hope so." He turned, backpack slung over one shoulder, and walked down the path toward his house. Emma stood there a moment longer, feeling a quiet shift inside her she couldn't quite name. Something had changed, subtle but real. The next morning, Emma woke to the smell of coffee and the soft hum of her old ceiling fan. The sunlight spilled through the curtains in golden streaks, brushing the living room with warmth. She couldn't shake the memory of Luke's visit the day before. It was strange how one short encounter could leave such a lingering feeling. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee slowly, thinking about him. There was something different in the way he looked at her, not just polite or thankful, but almost searching. It made her heart twist in a quiet, unidentifiable way. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luke. "Thanks again for yesterday. It meant a lot. Could I stop by this afternoon?" Emma smiled, a small laugh escaping. He didn't have to ask twice. "Of course," she typed back. The morning hours passed slowly. Emma tidied the house more thoroughly than usual, rearranging a few cushions, dusting the shelves, even straightening the small plant Luke had left. She wanted everything to feel welcoming, but not overdone. Just simple. Warm. By mid-afternoon, the doorbell rang. Emma opened it to see Luke standing there, backpack in hand again, but this time he seemed more relaxed. There was a hint of a grin on his face, and his eyes shone with something lighter than yesterday, a quiet hope, perhaps. "Hey, Mrs. Emma," he said. His voice sounded steadier, less hesitant. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "You're never an interruption," she replied, stepping aside. "Come in." They settled in the living room again, the same comfortable spot as before. Luke placed his backpack on the floor, unzipping it carefully. "I brought something else," he said, pulling out a small sketchbook. I draw sometimes. Thought maybe you'd like to see a few." Emma's eyes lit up. She had always appreciated creativity, the way it could reveal hidden parts of a person. "I'd love to see," she said. He flipped through the pages slowly, showing her pencil sketches of the neighborhood, the garden, even the park where he and his friends used to play. Each drawing had a softness to it, a quiet attention to detail that felt intimate. Emma found herself leaning closer, captivated by the subtle emotion in each stroke. "You're really talented, Luke," she said genuinely. "These are beautiful." He shrugged, cheeks flushing slightly. "Thanks. I don't usually show them to anyone. But I felt like you might understand." Emma nodded, touched by the trust in his words. There was something rare about this young man, a depth she hadn't expected. As they talked about art, life, and small moments from the past, Emma noticed the light in his eyes growing brighter, the tension from yesterday melting away. Time slipped by unnoticed. The sun began to sink lower in the sky, painting the room with soft amber tones. Outside, the neighborhood seemed to come alive again with the evening chatter of children and the distant bark of a dog. "Sometimes," Luke said quietly, closing his sketchbook, "it feels like I'm carrying all this weight alone. But yesterday, just sitting here, it felt lighter." Emma reached over and gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. "You don't have to carry it alone. Not all the time. And it's okay to lean on someone, especially someone who cares." Luke looked at her, eyes lingering. There was a flicker of something unspoken, a connection neither of them could quite name yet. It wasn't romantic in the obvious sense, but it was deep, personal, and comforting, a bond that made the world outside fade for a moment. They spent the next hour chatting about everything and nothing, laughing quietly at shared memories, and sharing small confessions. Emma felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sense of having been chosen to witness something important, something private yet beautiful. At some point, Luke glanced at his watch. "I should probably head home soon," he said reluctantly. Emma nodded, trying not to let her disappointment show. "Of course. You know where to find me." He packed up his sketchbook and stood, hesitating by the doorway. "Mrs. Emma, thank you. For yesterday, for today. For listening. For just being here." Emma smiled softly, her heart tightening in a way she couldn't explain. "It's my pleasure, Luke. Really. You've reminded me how important small gestures are, and how a simple visit can mean more than we think." He gave her a small wave and left, the door closing gently behind him. Emma stood there a moment, absorbing the quiet. Something had shifted again, subtle, but unmistakable. The house felt warmer somehow, the air lighter. Later that evening, Emma found herself gazing out the window, thinking about the ease and trust Luke carried with him. She realized that their encounter had stirred something in her she hadn't felt in years. A quiet anticipation. A hope she hadn't expected. And then her phone buzzed once more. A message from Luke. "Can we do this again sometime? I felt really good today. Better than I have in a long time." Emma smiled, a soft laugh escaping her. She didn't respond immediately, just held the phone in her hands, feeling the flutter of something familiar and new all at once. The next day promised the possibility of more connection, more quiet moments that could change everything. But neither of them knew yet just how much these visits would shift the rhythm of their days and hearts. As the night deepened, Emma's thoughts kept returning to Luke, to his sketches, to the warmth of his presence. It was unexpected, subtle, yet undeniable. And somewhere, beyond the quiet streets and the glowing windows, a feeling of anticipation hung in the air, waiting to unfold. The next Saturday morning, Emma found herself pacing her small kitchen, coffee in hand, replaying the messages from Luke over and over. There was a nervous excitement in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't usually anticipate visits, especially from neighbors' kids, yet here she was, waiting for a young man who had grown into someone entirely new. The doorbell rang precisely at 10:45 a.m., and Emma hurried to answer. Luke stood there with a casual smile, carrying a small canvas this time. "Morning, Mrs. Emma. Thought I'd bring something a little different today." Emma's eyes lit up. "Oh, let me see." He handed her the canvas carefully. It was a painting of her garden, but not just a literal rendering. It captured the sunlight spilling through the trees, the flowers swaying in a gentle breeze, and the tiny stone path curling around the yard. It was alive, warm, and intimate. "It's beautiful, Luke," she whispered, tracing the strokes with her fingers. "You've captured the feeling of this place, not just what it looks like." He shrugged modestly, cheeks faintly pink. "I wanted you to see it the way I see it when I come here. Comfortable. Safe. Happy." Emma felt her throat tighten. His words, combined with the tenderness of the painting, stirred an emotion she hadn't expected. It was more than pride or nostalgia. It was something deeper, a recognition that these small moments mattered to both of them. They settled in the living room again, the canvas resting on the coffee table between them. Luke seemed more relaxed today, leaning back in the chair, hands resting loosely in his lap. "I've been thinking about what you said, about leaning on someone," he confessed. "I don't usually do that. But being here, talking to you, it feels easier. Like I'm not carrying everything alone." Emma nodded, her own heart echoing his sentiment. "It takes courage to let someone in," she said softly. "And sometimes, we need that more than we realize." They talked for hours, moving seamlessly between memories, dreams, and small confessions. Luke shared his plans for the future, his hopes to travel, to work in design, to make something meaningful with his art. Emma listened, fascinated and quietly proud. There was a focus in him now, a quiet determination that hadn't been there before. At one point, Luke glanced out the window, noticing the soft glow of afternoon light filtering through the trees. "It's always so peaceful here," he said. "I forget how much I needed this calm." Emma smiled. "Sometimes the world moves too fast. We forget to pause, to breathe. That's what I like about these moments. They're small, but they matter." Luke's eyes met hers, holding a depth of understanding that left her momentarily speechless. There was a quiet electricity in the air, not loud or dramatic, but tangible, like a soft current moving between them. He reached into his backpack again, pulling out a small notebook. "I sketched something last night, inspired by our talks," he said, handing it to her. The page was filled with a series of delicate drawings, each one depicting small gestures, a hand reaching out, a smile, a quiet glance. Emma traced the lines with her eyes, feeling the emotion poured into each stroke. "You're remarkable, Luke," she said quietly. "Not just for your talent, but for how open you are, for letting someone see inside your world." He shrugged, looking away briefly. "I guess I didn't realize I could, or should, until I met someone who'd actually care to see." Emma's chest tightened. There was something about the sincerity in his voice that made her pulse quicken in a gentle, unfamiliar way. She had always cared for Luke, but now it felt different, more immediate, more personal. The afternoon light began to fade, and the room filled with soft shadows. Luke packed up his sketchbook and the canvas, hesitating near the door. I had a really good time," he said. "More than I expected. I didn't want to leave." Emma smiled, her fingers brushing the edge of the canvas. "I'm glad you came. You're always welcome here, Luke. And I mean that." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I'll be back soon. I promise." As he walked down the path toward his house, Emma stood at the window, watching him go. She felt a quiet longing she hadn't anticipated, a mix of warmth, hope, and anticipation. The subtle shift that began with his first visit was growing, becoming something she couldn't ignore. That evening, Emma sat by the window, reflecting on the day. She realized that these interactions, so small, so ordinary on the surface, were changing the rhythm of her life. They were stirring emotions she hadn't felt in years. A quiet, emotional connection was forming, one she didn't fully understand yet, but deeply appreciated. And somewhere inside, she felt that their bond was only beginning. There was more to come, moments that would challenge, surprise, and perhaps even transform both of them. The night was still, yet charged with the promise of another encounter. Emma didn't know when it would happen, but she felt it, an unspoken understanding that life had subtly shifted in a way she hadn't expected. As she prepared for bed, her thoughts returned to Luke's eyes, his sketches, and the calm presence he brought into her home. There was a sense of quiet anticipation that hung in the air, soft but persistent, like the prelude to something meaningful. By midweek, Emma felt a restless energy she hadn't experienced in years. The memory of Luke's visits, his laughter, and the quiet intimacy of their conversations seemed to linger in the air like a gentle perfume. She found herself glancing at the clock more often, wondering if he would come by again. That Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang at exactly 3:15. Emma hurried to open it and found Luke standing there, holding a small bag. "Hi, Mrs. Emma," he said, a mixture of excitement and nervousness in his eyes. "I thought maybe we could try something new today." Emma raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Oh, and what's that?" He stepped inside and set the bag down. "I brought some supplies. Thought we could do a little project together. Maybe plant a small flower bed, or paint something outside. Something creative." Emma smiled. She could see the enthusiasm in his eyes, the way his shoulders relaxed now that he was comfortable in her home. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said. "Let's do it." They moved to the backyard, sunlight filtering through the trees, casting a soft glow over the garden. Luke began unpacking the materials, a few small plants, pots, and paintbrushes. Emma found herself laughing as he fumbled with the supplies, the awkwardness of youth mixed with genuine effort. "This is going to be interesting," Emma said, trying not to grin too widely. "Interesting is good," Luke replied, a twinkle in his eye. "It means it's new, different, memorable." As they worked, planting flowers and arranging pots, the conversation flowed easily. Luke spoke of college life, his friends, and the challenges he faced, but also the small joys he had discovered. Emma shared stories from her past, moments of struggle and triumph, memories she hadn't told anyone else in years. At one point, Luke paused, looking at the small flower bed they had created together. "It's amazing," he said softly. "I didn't expect it to feel so fulfilling." Emma nodded. "It's the little things, Luke. Sometimes, creating something together, even something simple, can shift how we feel. Give us hope, even on tough days." He looked at her, eyes serious for a moment. "I've realized something since coming here," he said quietly. "These visits, they mean more than I thought they would. More than just a break from life. They feel like connection. Like being understood." Emma's heart tightened. There was honesty in his voice that left her momentarily breathless. She had always cared for him, but now it felt deeper, more profound. "I understand," she said softly. "And I'm glad you feel that. You deserve it, Luke. Everyone does." The afternoon stretched lazily into evening. Shadows grew longer, the air cooler, yet warm with the lingering sunlight. They painted a small wooden bench for the garden, laughing when the colors didn't turn out exactly as planned, teasing each other gently. It was effortless, natural, a rhythm that fit perfectly. When they finally finished, Luke stepped back to admire their work. "I really like this," he said, eyes sweeping over the garden, the flowers, and the painted bench. "It feels like something we made together. Something lasting." Emma smiled, a soft, quiet smile. "It is lasting. And it's ours, in a way. A memory, a moment." For a long while, they stood there, simply taking in the garden and the quiet evening. There was a subtle intimacy in the way they shared space, a gentle comfort neither had expected but both deeply appreciated. Luke finally glanced at his watch. "I should probably head home before it gets too late," he said reluctantly. Emma nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course. But you know you're always welcome. Any time." He smiled, the faintest blush coloring his cheeks. "Thanks, Mrs. Emma. I'll come by soon. Maybe we can do another project." As he walked down the path toward his house, Emma lingered by the door, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Something had changed between them, small, subtle, yet undeniable. The quiet moments, the shared laughter, the simple trust, they were building a bond neither of them had expected. That evening, Emma sat by the window, sipping her tea. The garden glowed softly in the fading light, the flowers and the painted bench a testament to their day together. She realized she had begun to anticipate Luke's visits not just for the company, but for the way they made her feel alive, understood, and quietly happy. And somewhere, beyond the quiet streets and the dimming sun, she knew that the subtle shift that had started with his first visit was deepening. Their lives were weaving together in a gentle, unspoken rhythm, and neither of them would remain the same. By the following week, Emma felt a strange, pleasant anticipation every time the clock neared mid-afternoon. The world outside continued its usual rhythm, cars passing, children playing, neighbors calling out greetings, but inside, her home seemed to hum with the memory of Luke's visits. She found herself rearranging the furniture slightly, making small adjustments, as if preparing the space for his presence. At exactly 4 o'clock on Friday, the doorbell rang. Emma opened it to see Luke standing there, carrying a small box. His smile was easy, warm, and familiar. "Hi, Mrs. Emma," he said. "I thought I'd bring something for the garden. A little surprise." Emma raised her eyebrows, intrigued. "Oh, what's the surprise?" He set the box down gently. Inside were small wind chimes, delicate and shimmering. "I thought these might bring some music to your garden when the breeze blows," he said softly. "You've made it feel like a special place, and I wanted to add to it." Emma felt a lump in her throat. The gesture was thoughtful, simple, yet it carried more meaning than he could know. "That's wonderful, Luke. Thank you." They moved outside together, carefully placing the wind chimes on a branch near the newly painted bench. As they worked, a gentle silence settled between them. It was comfortable, warm, and easy, the kind of quiet that only forms between people who understand each other without speaking. Luke glanced at her, eyes catching the late afternoon light. I really like coming here, he said. It's not just the garden or the projects. It's everything. The peace, the conversation, the way you listen. It feels right. Emma's chest tightened. His words stirred emotions she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. I feel the same way, she admitted. You've brought something special into these quiet days. Something I didn't realize I was missing. For a long while, they stood there, simply taking in the garden, the wind chimes, and the soft sounds of the neighborhood. The world felt slowed, deliberate, intimate. Emma realized that what had begun as a simple visit had transformed into something deeper, a connection neither of them could have anticipated, yet both embraced quietly. Luke picked up a small trowel, brushing dirt from his hands. I think this garden, our garden, is my favorite place right now, he said. It feels like it belongs to both of us, in a way. Emma smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. It does. And it always will. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Luke lingered at the edge of the garden. I should head home soon, he said, though his voice carried reluctance. Emma nodded, trying to steady her own emotions. Of course. But remember, you're always welcome. Any time, Luke. He smiled, a mixture of gratitude and something deeper in his eyes. I'll be back, he promised softly. After he left, Emma stayed by the window, watching him disappear down the path. The wind chimes swayed gently in the evening breeze, filling the garden with soft, melodic notes. She realized that the subtle shift that began with his first visit had changed her days, her thoughts, and her heart in ways she hadn't expected. Days passed, and Luke continued to visit. They worked on small projects, shared stories, and laughed easily. With every interaction, the bond between them grew stronger, more significant, yet never forced or dramatic. It was quiet, personal, and deeply moving. One evening, as they sat on the painted bench watching the sunset, Luke turned to her with a gentle seriousness. You've changed my perspective, Mrs. Emma, he said. Not just on life, but on connection, trust, and feeling understood. I didn't know I could feel this way about just sharing time with someone. Emma felt her heart swell. You've changed my days, too, Luke. You've reminded me that small moments can carry deep meaning, and that we're never too old or too busy to let someone in. They sat together in silence, the wind chimes singing softly in the evening breeze. The world outside continued its pace, but inside, time seemed to pause. Emma realized that what had started as a simple act of kindness, a young man seeking guidance, had grown into something far more profound. It was a bond built on trust, understanding, and subtle, quiet emotion. Not loud or dramatic, but undeniable. Something that had shifted her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. Luke glanced at her, eyes soft. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. For listening, for caring, for letting me feel welcome. Emma smiled, a gentle, warm smile. Thank you, Luke. For being brave enough to come here. For letting me share in your world. As the evening deepened into night, they lingered in the garden a moment longer, two hearts quietly connected by shared moments, soft laughter, and the simple beauty of being understood. The subtle shift that began weeks ago had blossomed into a meaningful presence, one that would continue to grow with every visit, every conversation, and every shared project. And in that quiet, gentle way, Emma realized life had changed for the better because of a visit, a sketchbook, a few flowers, and a young man willing to trust her with his presence. The wind chimes rang softly, carrying the promise of more days like this. A promise neither of them could ignore.